Hi everyone, I hope you're doing good. I am back to read chapter 2 of The Face in the Milk Carton. I'm planning on just reading a chapter at a time so the videos are not too long, but we left off on quite the cliffhanger with Janie looking at the face on the milk carton at lunch and realizing that that picture of that little girl was her, and it left off with I was kidnapped. So here we go with chapter 2. Janie learned that her body could function without her. She lived entirely inside her mind, searching her memory like a little kid going through an encyclopedia, trying to find the right heading. Jane Elizabeth Johnson, kidnapping of. Her body, including her voice, her smile, even her knowledge. During sixth period, she was actually able to answer questions in biology lab, continued to work properly. How interesting, Janie thought clinically. My body doesn't need me. She had a sense of herself being brain dead, running on tubes and machines. Inside, her mind spun. It was like having a color wheel for her brain. When it slowed down, things were separate, like primary colors. I have a mother and father. I have a childhood. I was not kidnapped. Kidnapping means bad people. I don't know any bad people, therefore I am making this up. But when her mind speeded up, the colors blended dizzily. This is me on there. I, Janie Johnson, I was kidnapped. But it could not be. The facts did not compute. She tried to climb outside her mind and go where her body was, sitting neatly at a desk, neatly taking notes. It was like crawling on glass. No matter how firmly she resolved not to think such stupid things, she thought them. She slithered backward into her mind. Perhaps it's insanity, Janie thought. Perhaps I'm trapped in here with this horrible idea, and I'll never get out. After a while, people will notice, and they'll lock up my body the way insanity has locked up my mind. She discovered that school had ended. Her body had gone to her locker, taken the right books, put on her jacket, remembered the gym uniform that had to be washed, said goodbye to friends and foe. But slowly, like someone trying to avoid the muddy parts of the grass, her small body seemed to thicken as if she had real iron in her blood and weighed several tons. The bus had left before she even arrived in the lobby. All the buses had left. It was pouring rain. The golden, gaudy blue October had vanished and turned black and thundering. The sky and its richest, full of range, ready to hit someone. It threw the rain against the pavement and ripped the leaves from the sugar maples. A car headed for her. She watched the car, realizing that it was going to run her over, that somehow, although she was on the sidewalk, the car was aimed for her. Perhaps I should move, she thought, but nothing happened to her legs. They stayed there, holding her color wheel brain in place, waiting to get run over. Get in quick, said Reeve, before you get any wetter. She had realized neither him nor his Jeep. She had recognized neither him nor his Jeep. He had pulled the Jeep almost over her toes. The outside rearview mirror brushed the buttons on her jeans jacket. Janie got in slowly. This is fun, she thought. Now I'm paralyzed and blind, too. Reeve said, let's ride down by the water, see if the tide is up over the road. Reeve loved floods. 2 years ago, there had been such a wonderful flood. The families on the beach roads had to be rescued by National Guard. Reeve had begged his parents to buy waterfront property so they could be in a place for the next flood. They had uncooperatively said they liked it better a mile away on top of a hill. But Reeve kept an old, battered canoe ready in the garage in case there should be another opportunity to paddle down the middle of the street. A true Noah Ark type rain. You should have some decent flooding. Janie nodded and turned the hot air vents in her direction to dry her clothes. Her thick red hair up like a new permanent from the wedding it had taken. "May I borrow your penknife?" she said. "Sure." He detached a knife from his belt loop while she steered the Jeep. Then she couldn't get the blade to come up without breaking off a fingernail. Reeve stopped at a red light and opened the penknife for her. Janie took the empty milk carton out of her book bag. She rinsed it out in the girls' room between fifth and sixth periods. She slit the carton open. Carefully, she flattened it out. Then she opened her 3-ring blue cloth English notebook, which had a clipboard in the inner front cover, and clipped the flat carton so that the photograph did not show. All Reeve could read was the logo, Flower Dairy, your local milk producer serving all communities on the shoreline. "That's an interesting hobby," observed Reeve. "You don't find too many milk carton collectors." Janie thought about Pete's explanation. These so-called kidnappings are really just divorces, where one parent takes the child away and doesn't tell the other parent that they're gone. Does that mean, she thought, that either my mother or my father is not my mother or my father? That somewhere out there is a real mother or a father who has worried for 12 years where I am? Reeve was staring out at the Atlantic Ocean, where the storm was hurling water and sand on the unprotected beaches. Reeve was handsomer than the rest of his family, yet there was a very strong resemblance among them. People could actually recognize Reeve by the smile that so much resembled his brother's, and the ruddy cheeks that were the trademark of his sister's. Now he was making terrible faces, flexing his forehead and lips and nose like silly putty because high tide had not managed to go over the road. Reeve turned the Jeep into the scenic overlook, better known amongst teenagers as the kissing overlook, because at night you could go there and watch couples in action. To the east stretched the ocean, and to the west, barely protected by thin splits of sand and mud, was the harbor where the wind jostled boats against the waves. The boatyard was filled with marina employees taking boats out of the water for the winter storage. Even over the pounding of the waves and rain, Janie could not hear a strange smacking sort of applause. No ringing hardware, nor waves against docks. "What's that noise?" she said. "At least I'm not deaf," she thought. "Flags," said Reeve. "American flags everywhere. On the docks, at the fuel pumps, on the boats. Each clapped in the fierce wind like a cloth maniac." "I'm sort of like a flag," said Reeve. "Red, white, and blue?" "No, a big banner flapping in the wind." "You're dumb," says the flag. "My sisters, my brother, my parents, they don't say it out loud, but they kind of line up my college application forms next to your grades and my SATs, and the old flag waves. You're dumb." "You're not dumb," said Janie. Although he was, she adored Reeve, but brains would round him out a bit. "My parents haven't taken me to see any college campuses," said Reeve, "nor arranged any interviews. Nothing. For Megan and Lizzie and Todd, we spent a year apiece visiting and pondering and drawing up lists with pros and cons. But me, they've already given up. They don't yell at me anymore." "You know what my mother said to your mother?" "No," said Janie, although she did. Her mother had repeated it, of course. Or is she my mother? Thought Janie. Is she Daddy's second wife? Did they steal me from my real mother? Or is it Daddy who is somebody else? Maybe they're not even married. Maybe they're just... "Your mother said to my mother, 'At least you can be proud of Megan, Lizzie, and Todd.' And then my mother said, 'That's true. 3 out of 4 isn't bad.' Nobody else in my family has red hair," thought Janie. "I don't laugh like Mother and Daddy. My fingernails aren't shaped like theirs. That's terrible," she said to Reeve. "They're being rotten, writing you off like that." "I'll be lucky if I get into community college," said Reeve. He fiddled with the radio dials and the heater knobs, flicked the emergency blinkers on and off, and pawed through the cassettes he had in the Jeep. "At least you have a Jeep to commute in," said Janie. But this was not a comfort to Reeve, who wanted to be brilliant, outstanding, impressive, and memorable, like his brothers and sisters. She opened her notebook. She tilted it and peered at the back of the milk carton. It was still her on there. She had not allowed herself to read the name under the photograph. Now she read it. Jenny Spring. Her mouth stopped being a color wheel. Her brain stopped being a color wheel and became an echo chamber. Jenny Spring, Jenny Spring, Jenny Spring, Jenny. What have you got in there? Teased Reeve. He reached for the notebook to see the forbidden article to read what forbidden article was stashed in it. Janie jerked it back. No, Reeve, don't, she said urgently, and he was startled, pulling his hand back as if maybe it had a scorpion inside the English notebook. Reeve left the scenic overlook so fast they hydroplaned over the puddles. Then he gnashed the gears, roaring forward until the narrow, wet beach road skidding purposely. He took each gear up to its highest RPM so the motor screamed. He jerked left into the traffic on Route 1. Like a warrior, he battled the cars in the rain, pedal to the metal, taking off from each stop sign like a chariot racer. Janie touched her seatbelt and said nothing. She would feel that way too, if she were Reeve. While he was passing in a no-passing zone, Janie turned the milk carton cover over again. The little girl's name and birth date, the 800 number to call if you recognized her, the place from which she vanished in New Jersey. None of it meant a thing to Janie. I've always felt a year younger than Sarah Charlotte and Adar, thought Janie, and if that's my birthday, I am a year younger. I'm not old enough to get my driver's license after all. But it was too ridiculous. She had a family, a perfectly normal family. They loved her. She loved them. I don't feel like going home yet, do you? Said Reeve. He spoke in the voice people use when you have to agree or walk home. Besides, she did agree. She had hardly ever agreed with anything more. Let's get ice cream, said Reeve. He jerked the wheel hard, turned across traffic with far too little time, and just barely missed getting a pickup truck through the side of the Jeep. The trucker rightly leaned on his horn. Janie gave him an apologetic smile and the town wave. The trucker grinned at Janie. She shook her red hair at him, and the guy grinned even wider. Perhaps I'm fascinating after all, she thought. That trucker forgave Reeve because I tossed my hair. He'd believe me if I said my name was Jane Johnstone. I don't have any money, she told Reeve, and I can't have ice cream. But what if my name is Jenny Spring, she thought. I'll pay anyway. I saw you drinking milk for lunch. You've already broken the rules. He saw me drinking Sarah Charlotte's milk, she thought, which I drank long after he waved, so he looked back, checked me out a second time. They went to a booth, passing two groups of teenagers she knew by sight, but not by name. All eyes landed on Reeve with Jenny and drew conclusions. Janie was not sure she liked this. It was not a date. Poor Reeve was just having to admit he was dumb. Janie was his thrusty, rusty next-door neighbor. Reeve ordered 2 hot fudge sundaes on 1 scoop each of vanilla and chocolate mint. For years, when they were little kids going shopping with their mothers, this had been Janie's order. She had changed preferences since the last time she had ice cream with Reeve. Up till the lactose intolerance discovery, she ordered vanilla with butterscotch topping. She said nothing. She was quite touched that Reeve remembered. Reeve talked about first quarter grades, which were coming up in only a few weeks. He talked about the horror of failing a senior year, of having to go to a lousy college with Megan, Lizzie, and Todd went to such winners, the horror of all school at all times. The waitress brought the sundaes much more quickly than usual, and Janie thanked her. She turned to look at her sundae. The world shifted. Friendly ice cream seemed to spin around her, all its flavors, all its boosts, tilting and screaming. She was sitting with somebody else, sitting on a high stool, a stool that swiveled. She was turning herself slowly and carefully by holding onto the counter. Her feet did not touch the footrest. She was little. She was admiring her white cotton socks as she turned because they had a little strip of lace. A woman was next to her, not swiveling, long straight hair cascading down the woman's back, so pretty Janie had to touch it. The woman kept her hand in the air behind Janie's back so she wouldn't tip off the spinning stool. Janie was having a sundae, whipped cream on it, eating the cherry off her sundae first, and then one off the woman's sundae. They were laughing. Janie was little. The woman hugged her, swung her around as the stool had swung. There was a hot wind. They were outside now, in a huge parking lot, maybe the biggest parking lot in the world. Her dress, white with tiny dark dots, blew in the air. "Janie," said Reeve, "are you all right?" Janie's mouth was dry, her hands icy. She was shivering all over. She could feel the tiny table shaking from her shivers. Reeve was frightened. "Are you getting the flu?" he said. He put his hand out as if to stop her from crossing some terrible road. "You're not really seriously allergic to milk, are you? I mean, is your throat going to close up or your heart stop?" She was aware that he was calling her, raising his voice, that people were looking. "Janie? Janie, are you okay?" His hand took hers, and to her frozen fingers, his hand felt like a furnace, as if he was going to scorch her. "I'm fine," she said, "dizzy." She had always had control over her daydreams, like the daydreams of denim and lace in which she designed every detail to suit herself. She had never had a daydream that dreamed itself like nightmares. They crawled out of her brain like a creature of the dark, a daymare. Janie shuddered. "I'd better not eat the sundae," she said. Already the daymare was fading, leaving her flesh like jelly, but no pictures to remember it by. Woman, she thought dimly, stool, dress, hot wind. It must be, thought Janie, that my life is boring. Deep down, I must be as angry over the boredom as Reeve is over being dumb. He drives like a maniac to feel better, and I fall into maniac daydreams. My parents are my parents. Nobody kidnapped me. I don't really remember the dress. Reeve called to the waitress. "Could we have these to go?" He pointed to Janie. "She doesn't feel well." "They'll be messy," said the waitress doubtfully. "The top will be on the bottom." "Tell me about it," thought Janie. And we will stop there. Bye, guys. Have a great rest of your day.